The next behavior we're going to look at is the animate behavior. So first, we'll create an actor by again clicking the plus icon here in our inspector. And then we're going to add in a few images. So I'll go to the Images tab down here in our library and click the plus sign. So we can add in a few images here. And I'm just going to navigate to the animation folder. I'm going to drag in all of these images here. So 1 through 5. Really simple stuff, nothing too crazy. We'll get into characters and things like that later. So if I go back to the behaviors here and double click on our actor 1, you can see our actor 1 doesn't have anything inside of it. So we can actually drag and drop the animation behavior here into actor 1. And again, you see this behavior bar here. And we don't really have any sort of attributes inside this behavior bar. What we need to do is actually drag images directly into this behavior bar that we see here. So we can go to those images that we dragged in. And if I were to just click and drag on all of these images and then drag it in the behavior bar, depending on how you've numbered your images, they may be set up properly or not. And that's really why I'm not working with a cute little character right now. I'm just working with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That way we can really see what frame is out of order here. See, for some reason this was numbered 1 and this was numbered 2, but we can see that's not exactly how we want it to be. So even if the images get kind of rearranged here inside GameSalad and are not the way you want, you can actually click and drag on a frame and readjust it. So now you can see I have 1, 2, 4, so we'll switch to 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have everything in the order that we need it to be now. So if we go back and drag our actor into our scene here and click preview, you're going to see that this animation is already happening. So we'll go back and jump back into the actor, and you can see that we're animating from this frame to this frame to this frame. So if this was a character walking or an explosion or a plant growing, you can imagine how you can make this really, really simple. Now we start off with a default of 10 frames per second. So if we turn that down to something like 1 frame per second and we hit preview, then you can see every second we go to a new frame. So there's a lot of really interesting things you can control with the frames per second. Maybe you just want something that is animating very slowly like this. Maybe it's a light changing. Maybe it's a light blinking of some kind. Then you're going to want it to be at a very slow frame rate. But if it's something like an explosion, then you're going to want to turn that frame rate up quite a bit. And we can click preview, and you can see that that'll happen quite rapidly. Now you notice that I have this looping right now. So if I turn off loop and we click preview, you can see that happens really, really quick. I'll just hit the reset here. So you can see less than a second we go through all 5 of those frames. So we'll just back that up. And you can see restore actor image when done. Now what does that mean? Well, if we go back here to our inspector, you can see that this actor doesn't have any sort of image in it. But if we had a huge image library here, we could pretty much drag any image that we want here, and that would be our actor's image. So for instance, if I drag the number 1, or the 1 image up, and drop it on top of my actor, you can see now, all of a sudden here inside my stage, we have the number 1. I can do that with any image, so I'll drag the 3. Now we can see the 3 here. So if we just go back to 1, we double click on this, and we look at this restores actor image when done, that means that after the animation is finished, so if I click preview, it'll go back to the original image. And in this case, the original image was 1. So I'll reset this. You can see it goes through all of those and then back to 1. Let me slow this down a little bit so we can see that working a little bit better. So we'll just do 5 frames per second. Preview that. There we go. So we cycle through all 5 frames, and then when all 5 frames are done, we start back at 1. So the best thing to do right now, if you don't have a huge library of artwork or animated characters, is to just take a moment to jump into any image editing program like Photoshop, and there's a lot of free ones as well, and just create a few numbers like this, or work with the ones that came with this project. just simple animations. Again, as I've said in other videos, when you get into Game Salad, don't try to create an entire game from scratch. You want to perfect a lot of these little behaviors, and it's amazing how fast you'll actually get good at all of these behaviors. And once you've perfected all of them, then you're really going to get some creative ideas for some amazing games. But if you just jump right in and try to create an entire game from scratch from the get-go, you're going to have a lot of flawed behaviors and a lot of flawed animation and a lot of flawed things, and it's just going to turn you off about the whole process. So if you take the time to really understand all of these little things and experiment and experiment and experiment with each one of these behaviors and see how far you can push a single behavior before you even move on to new and exciting things, you'll be much more satisfied working in Game Salad. So take a moment to experiment with a few frames, play with the loop, play with the restore actor, and of course adjust the speed. And don't forget that you can actually drag in more frames. So if I wanted to, I can start going crazy here and dragging in anything that I want. And if I hit preview, you can see now instead of going through 1 through 5, we're kind of doing a random sequence of numbers here. So let your imagination flow and think of all the different images that you could plug in here, as far as plants growing and explosions and things falling apart and things growing and fixing themselves and characters fighting. It's just amazing what you can do. But again, take the time to experiment on this simple level and you'll be much happier in the future.